America's most scenic drives. Join us in the heartland as we venture along our nation's most magnificent highways and byways. The open road beckons, and together we'll see and do it all. From stone arches that seem to span the sky, to the otherworldly wonders of the Four Corners region, this is one journey you'll never forget. You'll explore the enchanted land of Monument Valley, wind into the rugged Rocky Mountains of Colorado, and seek the hidden world of lost Native American tribes, rafting the legendary Rio Grande, and braving narrow mountain passes are just a few of the many adventures ahead. Ride into Telluride, the town where Butch Cassidy first made his name, but where mountain bikers and skiers now hold sway. And discover the romantic covered bridges of Madison County, home to great Americans like John Wayne. Then on into the Ozarks of Missouri, and that's not all. This journey carries us to the Badlands where bison still roam, onto Mount Rushmore, and into Cheyenne, Wyoming with its world-famous rodeo. On this journey, leave your worries behind and let us do the driving. The adventure begins in America's heartland. It's a journey from the golden fields of Iowa south to the green Ozarks and finally west to Branson, Missouri. Iowa. These rolling hills are home to a practical and down-to-earth people. But don't let appearances fool you. There's far more to this country than meets the eye. Charming Madison County is known as Iowa's Covered Bridge County. And no journey through the American heartland would be complete without a visit here. This is Cedar Bridge. Even though it's more than 100 years old, Cedar Bridge was so well built, cars can cross it to this day. The Cedar was one of 19 covered bridges in Madison County, but time and vandalism have left only 6. Further along in Madison County stands the Imes Bridge. Quaint structures, covered bridges served as the backdrop for the best-selling book, The Bridges of Madison County. In that story, a National Geographic photographer traveled to Madison to document these icons from a bygone era. Once here, he soon fell under their spell. Winding through the byways and back roads of Madison County, it's easy to appreciate the gentle allure of this country. Roads like this lead to the next bridge along the way, the Hollowell. These roofs were added to protect the bridges from the ravages of snow and ice. The sharp angle of the Hollowell's overhang ensured that wind-blown rain couldn't reach the floorboards below. A little further down the road is Winterset, the county seat. The The first white settlers came here in 1846 and transformed the land through industry and tenacity. As if the covered bridges weren't enough, Madison's early residents also built this county courthouse. At its completion in 1876, it was considered one of the finest west of Chicago. Today, though, Winterset is best known as the birthplace of John Wayne, the embodiment of American grit. More bridges await along the roads that lead out of town. Miles of prime Iowa farmland lie between Winterset and Madison's more famous landmarks. Out here, the green corn seems to reach for the sky, while the rich purple of the clover and the creamy damask of Queen Anne's lace grace the route. As a bee buzzes in the afternoon sun, an ant helps itself to a meal of nectar, and sunflowers wave in the breeze. Nature seems to reign supreme where lush green fields are filled with contented cows. But then a fruit of man's labors comes into view. The Roseman Bridge. This was the setting where the characters in the bridges of Madison County first fell in love. Today, a real couple exchanges vows at this bridge, a romantic wedding inspired by a modern fairy tale. These newlyweds have chosen each other much as their ancestors once chose to settle in the heartland of this country. They walk towards a future that's full of promise and joy. As the dusk draws in, the sun sets over Iowa's farm country and marks the end of a fruitful day. The next morning, an early start leads through River City, a small town of white houses and picket fences where the flag hangs just about everywhere. And children play much as they have for hundreds of years. Nothing could be more American. Unless it's a 4th of July parade, of course. River City, Iowa was the setting for the popular play, The Music Man. Clearly, Independence Day is a highlight of the year in these parts. Everyone gets in on the act. Marching is serious business here, and some of the best bands in the country come from Iowa. As the last band marches past, it's time to get back into the car and steer south. Here, deep in Missouri, it's hard to imagine a more relaxing drive than a spin through these lush green hills. Or any of the many picturesque sights the Ozarks offer. Crystal clear water rises from hidden springs, literally bubbling up through the rock, creating the sparkling wonderland that is the Missouri Ozarks. Broiling rapids alternate with tranquil creeks, and blue pools flow into icy brooks. At Big Spring, a short hike leads to a limestone cliff that floats above a seething cauldron of nature's finest water. Each day, 286 million gallons gushes up from deep beneath the ground and pours into the Current River. The Ozark streams are an angler's paradise, teeming with bass, bluegill, crappies, and trout. And when you've had your fill of fishing, you can take a dip in one of 1,000 dappled pools. Or maybe just let the rivers take you where they may. The beauty of the Ozarks is best seen from on high. And 2 miles west of the town of Branson, the aptly named Inspiration Tower rises above the trees. From here, you can look out onto the Ozarks hills, where more fun-filled and fascinating destinations await in the hollows around Branson. Drive along the Ozarks byways, and you'll spot rough plank churches and log cabins hewn from the area's trees by its first resourceful settlers. At the family resort of Silver Dollar City, a group of musicians called the Homestead Pickers carries on the traditional ways of strumming and picking. Southwest of Branson lies Dogwood Canyon, a 10,000-acre private wilderness refuge. Here, you'll find a great place for biking and hiking. Amish craftsmen built this bridge. And today, elk have been reintroduced to roam much as they did hundreds of years ago. Pristine Dogwood Creek winds through the canyon. Follow the creek downstream, and it leads to Table Rock Lake. Here, the showboat Branson Belle plies the dappled waters. As this action-packed day comes to a close, a relaxing sunset cruise is the ideal way to cap off this leg of the trip. Our next journey starts in West Texas, the very home of the great outdoors. We'll take Route 170 east and make a grand loop through Big Bend National Park. This was once a country where only Apaches and desperados dared to roam. The Wild West of cattle drives and border raids, where brave men and women came in search of wide open spaces and rugged camaraderie. Texas is known as the Lone Star State for good reason. Even oil pumpers seem to toil away on their own. Out here, Hardy cowboys still pride themselves on independence and self-reliance and an ability to live off the land. And this, Big Bend National Park, may be the heart and soul of that land, the last true frontier of the Wild West. And it's a realm full of surprises. From between the sheer cliff faces of the Santa Elena Canyon appears a rolling ribbon of water, the storied Rio Grande. Cattle rustlers like the legendary bandit Pancho Villa once hid out along these banks. So much sand is carried in these waters, it turns the river a murky hue. But this same sand also gives it the grit to channel its way through these towering cliffs. Big Bend derives its name from a sharp curve that formed where the river cut through the rocks. Out in the desert heat, hardy souls leave their air-conditioned cars behind and take a slow ride down the Rio Grande. The river may look sluggish, but it's actually the most vital resource in all Big Bend. A band of emerald plant life flourishes along its banks. But with temperatures soaring into the hundreds, water soon drains from the sandy soil. Away from the river's banks, the vegetation thins. Still, the hardiest forms of life have adapted to the harsh desert and turned it green in places. It's a wonder that any man or animal would choose to call this desert home, but amazingly, it's a great place to find big game. Take this warning seriously. In the Chisos Mountains, at the center of Big Bend, mountain lion and black bear still reign at the top of the food chain. Soaring some 7,000 feet above sea level, the Chisos are a great place to search for something wild. The Chisos Basin Road offers great views, but keep your eyes on the road. Its hairpin turns and steep grades can make driving hazardous. Mule deer appear at the edge of a scrub pine grove. They seem wary, and they have every right to be. Deer are a favorite meal of Big Bend's greatest predator, the elusive mountain lion. Weighing as much as 165 pounds and able to cover 25 miles a day, these animals need a lot of space. And Big Bend provides it. The park covers an area the size of Rhode Island, giving these solitary creatures plenty of room. Another of Big Bend's remarkable animals is less shy and can be found near campsites. Perpetually hungry, black bears can and will eat almost anything. They graze like cattle when the grass is young and sweet, forage for grubs and roots, and will even stalk deer. At the end of this day at Big Bend, the road winds back down to the desert floor. The next adventure takes you to a realm far from the wide expanses of West Texas. The Four Corners region, the only place in America where 4 states meet. We journey from Bryce Canyon to Arches to Monument Valley and onto Mesa Verde on one of the great scenic drives in the American Southwest. In southern Utah, ponderosa pines give way to the fantastic landscape of Bryce Canyon National Park. Extending for 20 miles along the edge of a plateau, Bryce isn't really a canyon, more of a honeycomb of hollows and spires sculpted and eroded by thousands of years of wind and rain. These enchanting formations have been given an otherworldly moniker, hoodoos, so called because they resemble hooded ghosts. Some of these spectacular stone needles have names of their own. Thor's hammer, because it looks like a tool worthy of the mighty Norse thunder god. And Tower Bridge, even though it's a long way from London. An 18-mile drive traces the canyon's rim, affording fantastic views. But to really experience Bryce, trade in your steering wheel for stirrups and head off on horseback along some of the park's 50 miles of trails. Even up close, Bryce continues to mystify. Something as simple as a tree becomes extraordinary, clinging to the edge of a cliff, or climbing toward the sun between walls of unyielding stone. According to geologists, these serried ranks of stone were painted glorious reds, oranges, and ochres by mineral oxidation. The effect produces one of the world's great natural light shows. Only a rainbow can rival the intense colors of Bryce Canyon. As the sun sets, the rocks seem to glow from within, granting a truly soul-stirring scene. The next morning, the road leads from Bryce and heads north and east to Arches National Park. Early settlers of the 19th century were so amazed by these formations, they thought they'd found the ruins of an earlier civilization. But a hike into the park for a closer look makes it clear that nature, not man, is the architect of these wonders. For more than 100 million years, a mix of icy winters and baking sun has slowly carved out the park's 2,000 arches, domes, tunnels, and spires, patiently crafting them into miraculous shapes. But man did give them fanciful names. These are known as the three gossips, standing frozen in mid-chatter for all eternity. This is the organ because it moans and trills in the wind. And though far from soft and woolly, this is sheep rock. Some names, of course, do describe reality. This is delicate arch. It seems to stretch across the sky in defiance of all the laws of gravity. Even more precarious is Landscape Arch. 300 feet long and weighing hundreds of tons, it tapers to a sliver that's only 6 feet wide. The whole structure could collapse at any moment, and rangers advise visitors to stay clear. Forging on past Arches, the road heads south to a rugged landscape long immortalized by Hollywood. A sky-piercing sentinel, Agathla Peak stands guard at the entrance to this realm. Monument Valley, a tableau punctuated by vast spires, buttes, and pillars. This is John Ford Point, named for the great Hollywood director of such classic westerns as Stagecoach, Fort Apache, and The Searchers, all set here. Ford's films depicted larger-than-life characters battling each other and the elements in a wild landscape. Still, the silver screen can't do justice to this scene. Few places can rival Monument Valley for stark beauty and grandeur. Here are massive natural columns that tower nearly 1,000 feet above the rocky plain. The Navajo tribe has been caretaker here for generations, and they've set aside a spectacular 30,000-acre park. Its 17 miles of roadways can be rough, especially after rain, but they're well marked. The Navajo have embraced Monument Valley's nature as their own. And two of their finest traditional artists, teacher and student, perform a powwow dance at John Ford Point. Singing, drumming, and dancing still play integral roles in Navajo social and religious life, much as they have for hundreds of years. As the sun sets over Monument Valley, the land and its people seem ageless. Yet the Navajo speak of others who lived here even before they did. 1,000 years ago, centuries earlier than the Navajo, another people thrived here, then mysteriously disappeared. This lost civilization left few traces here. But in southwestern Colorado, it's another story. This is Mesa Verde National Park. It lies atop a green tableland laced with canyons. It's a place of concealed wonders, a place that remarkably thousands of men and women once called home. Their multi-storied dwellings cling precariously to the sheerest cliffs. Ladders were used to access the upper floors. The people who built these structures are known as the Anasazi, or Ancient Ones. For hundreds of years they hunted and farmed this land, but then, around 700 years ago, they vanished. No one knows exactly what happened to the Anasazi. They kept no written record. But the ghostly ruins they left serve as a spellbinding reminder of a remarkable culture. Mesa Verde is also the starting point for our next driving tour. It's a great loop called the San Juan Skyway that takes us east to Durango, north past Silverton, south through Telluride, and back almost to where we began. Following Route 160 east to the town of Durango is like setting out on an Old West adventure. Like a ghost train riding on rails of fire, the Durango-Silverton Narrow Gauge Railway comes down the tracks. Since 1882, $300 million worth of precious metals have been hauled along these tracks from the surrounding hills. For more than a century, too, passengers have been boarding the train just to enjoy the scenic ride. The locomotive is a vintage steam engine from the early 1920s, lovingly restored and maintained. The conductor calls, "All aboard, next stop Silverton." The 45-mile trip climbs nearly 3,000 feet and takes the train 3.5 hours. It's a wonderful way to travel, and for the first easy stretch in the valley, the train chugs along at quite a pace. But not for long. It can't keep up with a car when it hits the hills. The road leads on to Silverton. Once a mining town, Silverton makes its livelihood from its Arcadian setting, an ideal base for the hikers and skiers who come from around the world. This serpentine marvel of engineering is called the $1 Million Highway. Rock slides are common here, and much of the white-knuckled route passes without guardrails. It tunnels through the mountainside and hugs cliffs hundreds of feet above the valleys below. At Red Mountain Pass, you reach 11,018 feet, the highest point on the $1 Million Highway. There are many colorful stories about how the $1 Million Highway got its name. One tells it was the high cost of paving the old toll road. Another, from an earlier time, says one stagecoach passenger declared she wouldn't ride over the same route again for $1 million. Either way, it's a fitting name for a route that offers such a wealth of scenic overlooks around every corner. Ouray, called the Switzerland of America because of its nestled spot in an alpine hollow, flashes by. Then it's time to leave the San Juan Mountains behind, cross the broad valleys where True Grit and How the West Was Won were filmed, and head to the town where the real Wild West meets the 21st century. Telluride, Colorado. Locals say that history in Telluride is something you can feel, and on Main Street you can almost sense the colorful characters from another time. Butch Cassidy robbed his first bank here, setting off on one of America's most storied criminal careers. Telluride still has its share of real characters. But today's wild bunch rides into town on mountain bikes, not horses, and rustles up cappuccino instead of contraband. Telluride is a great place to get out of the car and stretch your legs. Some of the chicest stores east of Rodeo Drive line Main Street, and it's great fun to peruse the latest fashions in this relaxed setting. But natural wonders await just beyond the town limits. A 2-hour hike leads to a sight not to be missed: the exquisite Bridal Veil Falls. A 425-foot plunge turns much of the waterfall to mist long before it reaches the rocks below. The very best views of all, however, are accessible by neither car nor foot. Only a gondola ride can easily carry you high into the mountains. It's a wonder that in just a few months, snow will blanket these peaks and thousands will flock here for the unrivaled slopes. For now, though, a panorama of green unfolds around this storybook town. Leaving Telluride, the road travels south beside the Dolores River, skirting abandoned mines, all that remains of past gold and silver booms. Aspen trees flank the route in this, the last leg of the San Juan Skyway. Now sheer mountains give way to valley bottoms and farms. Gazing out on this splendid scene, two of nature's greatest wonders grace the landscape: a rainbow chased by a bolt of lightning. With the setting sun, you reach the end of this journey around the San Juan Skyway. Our journey now runs east to west and takes us to the natural and man-made wonders of the Badlands, Mount Rushmore and Devil's Tower. The road crosses the upper plains of South Dakota, where pronghorn graze and bison spar as they have for eons, all under the watchful eyes of prairie dogs. This is an increasingly rare sight. Prairie dog colonies once covered the American plains, but today their numbers are dwindling. Development and cattle ranching have pushed prairie dogs out of many of their old habitats. It's a real treat to watch these playful, charming animals where they're safe in this priceless sanctuary, the Badlands National Park. Much of the rest of the Badlands, though, is far less hospitable. Clearly, it's a place deserving of its name. The road rolls through a landscape of sharply eroded buttes and spires, a veritable moonscape right here on Earth. All of the park's 244,000 acres are open to hikers, but stick to well-marked paths. It's easy to get lost in this disorienting landscape. Only bighorn sheep really seem at home. They clamber among the cliffs and gorges, feeding on thin grass and lichens. But where the Badlands edge the prairie, nature thrives. Once near extinction, these bison are staging a remarkable comeback. Though the massive herds that once stretched from horizon to horizon are gone, the Badlands is now one place where the buffalo still roam. From a vantage point on the rim of the Badlands, shadows lengthen across this jagged realm. The route leads west into the pine-covered Black Hills of South Dakota. Suddenly, like a mirage, 4 faces appear framed in a tunnel ahead. Washington, Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Lincoln all gaze out over the valley from the granite bluffs of Mount Rushmore. Measuring 60 feet from brow to chin, these carvings commemorate men who were giants in their lifetimes. Sculptor Gutzon Borglum and his crew blasted, drilled, and chiseled 500,000 tons of rock from the Black Hills during the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. And they chose the right material. Rushmore's granite erodes less than 1 inch every 10,000 years, ensuring that these portraits will be enjoyed by countless generations to come. As night falls, a spectacular light show takes place. At the next stop further west, even man's most noble creations can appear timid when compared to nature's. This is Devil's Tower, and it dwarfs everything around it. This natural monument rises 1,267 feet above the Belle Fourche River in Wyoming. 60 million years ago, a plume of liquid rock surged up from the Earth's molten crust, then cooled. As the surrounding rock eroded, this fanciful skyscraper appeared. Native American legend holds that this was the stump of a giant tree clawed by a bear. And more recently, it served as the fictional UFO observation post in the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Today, people scramble among the rocks like spiders. Climbers flock to Devil's Tower, traversing its exposed rock faces and reveling in the views it affords. And what views there are! A stunning finale to this part of the trip. The next adventure leads us to Montana, almost to our nation's border with Canada. It travels east through Glacier National Park from Apgar to St. Mary along a road called Going to the Sun. This lofty kingdom is known as the crown of the continent. And this is one of its rarest jewels. Seen from above, Lake McDonald seems to point toward the mountains, and there's no better way to see this land than on the spectacular Going to the Sun road in the mountain paradise of Glacier National Park. Despite its twists and turns, the road carries you from west to east, guiding drivers toward the rising sun. This far north, fall comes early, turning the leaves gold, gilding each and every vista. Some, inspired by nature's paintbox, pull over to capture the splendor on a canvas of their own. Along the winding road, thunderous Haystack Creek Falls comes into view. Beyond the cataract, vegetation in the ponds and marshy areas attracts moose. 2 bulls, each weighing as much as 1,000 pounds, test their strength against each other. Near Avalanche Lake, thick stands of hemlock and cedar shade hiking trails, part of a 700-mile network that crisscrosses the park. Even a short walk can lead to some of the park's smaller but still wondrous sights. And there are plenty of alternatives for those who don't want to hike. Pushing further into the Rockies on the Going to the Sun Road, the peaks of the Continental Divide appear ahead. This is Logan Pass. At more than 6,600 feet, it's the highest point on the route. Here, alpine meadows and open slopes abound with countless flowers. Hiking even higher, puffy wands of beargrass dance in the breeze. Snow and ice adorn these mountaintops all year round. From Logan Pass to Hidden Lake, this land's a nature lover's dream. If you're lucky, you'll spot the park's signature animal, the mountain goat. Clearly, some have grown accustomed to human visitors. This Colombian ground squirrel is equally unafraid. Coyotes are a different story and, for the most part, keep to themselves. As recently as 1985, even this incredible sight was common when salmon still returned to spawn in Glacier. Dropping out of the mountains, the road passes through the aspens, alders, and birches that hem St. Mary Lake. A canoe ride takes its riders through a serene vista. Alone in this calm lake, Goose Island seems to float on the surface. As the sun sets on this majestic landscape, our next trip is already set to begin. The first stop, Cheyenne, Wyoming. Then it's west and north on Route 287 to Yellowstone National Park. Once a year in late July, Cheyenne hosts its world-famous Frontier Days and the daddy of all rodeos. First held in 1897, this event was the premier celebration of the Old West, long before the word rodeo had ever been invented. Back then, this was known simply as bucking and pitching. Today, more than 1,200 contestants compete for $500,000 in prizes. Cheyenne's Frontier Days provides more action in one day than most rodeos offer in a week. For these people, the Wild West is still very much a part of everyday life. "400 miles west, it's the same story, but this time in a natural setting. Founded as the first national park in the world, Yellowstone reigns as a place without peer, a kingdom of fire and water. Through the park's rustic gate stands a domain set aside by Congress over 125 years ago. 600,000 years before that, a cataclysmic volcanic eruption blew the center of the park sky high. Molten rock still lies near the surface, powering Yellowstone's thermal acrobatics. Some of the park's many boardwalks pass pools of clay that seethe and bubble. Rising steam churns these curiosities called mud pots. Some of them are scorching hot, reaching close to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. At Mammoth Hot Springs, white calcium carbonate leaches from limestone and forms terraced baths filled with superheated water. Some of these terraces grow as much as 22 inches a year. Algae bloom in this extreme environment, tinting the water various shades of green. But Yellowstone isn't just about thermal activity, it contains an abundance of wildlife, too. On Fountain Flats Drive, a bull elk struts into view and bugles for his harem. His daunting rack of antlers is an awesome sight. You can press deeper into the park on horseback, through meadows dappled with vibrant wildflowers. In Yellowstone's interior, mountain vales yield to pristine brooks that race down the mountainsides. Amazingly, the high-altitude Yellowstone Lake is a refuge for pelicans. But before the sun sets on this wonderland, there's still time to catch Yellowstone's most famous display. More than 200 of the world's 500 active geysers reside here. Castle Geyser resembles a crumbling fortress puffing out clouds of steam. Over half of the geysers in the park are located in the Upper Geyser Basin, within walking distance of the park's most popular attraction. Suddenly, Old Faithful explodes. Approximately every 88 minutes, the geyser erupts in a display that never ceases to amaze. Thousands of gallons of water and steam soar as high as 180 feet. Old Faithful gives vent to the awesome mystery and power underneath Yellowstone's surface. What a perfect end to this drive through America's heartland.